Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our February 3rd Thursday Common Sense Parenting Facebook Live. My name is Gabby, joined here as always with Bridget Barnes, who is our Common Sense Parenting expert. Bridget, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing really great. It's sunny here, so that's always a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. We need a little afternoon sunshine to, pick up the spirit. So that's great. Well, we are talking about a pretty loaded topic here. So we're going to be talking all about how to talk to your teen about sex, drinking, and making good choices. So, like I said, it is loaded. So if you're watching live with us here, please make sure to leave a comment below if you have a question for Bridget as we go through our conversation. And please also give this video a like and share it with other parents who you think may find this helpful. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Bridget, is there a magic age when I should talk to my kid about sex and having sex and what sex is?
Well, no, there's no real magic age to talk to children about sex. However, most sex education experts would suggest that at age 11, a conversation about sex should occur. Children around the age of 11 still seek out their parents' guidance and are willing to listen to it, unlike some teenagers. And it's probably more risky to wait to talk to young children about sex. Most studies show that risk taking behavior, kids say that they hadn't talked to their parents about sex. And so you want to talk to them about that. Still, age is just a number. So, based on the child's developmental maturity, so they should have a growth spurt really quickly, and we need to have a conversation. Or the social interaction, like mom gets pregnant and the child is asking, where did that baby come from and how are they going to get out of there? So, you may want to have a conversation with kids that is more layered. Like you tell them a little information now based on their age and a little more and a little more as they, grow and develop. So there's some great literature out there, Gabby. There's a great book called Sex is a Funny Word,
Mm-hmm.
a book about bodies, feelings, and you. And I really strongly suggest that parents talk about relationship too, because before intimacy, you have to have a relationship. And there's a great book on the Boys Town catalog called No Simple Rules for Dating My Daughter. I made my son read that. And it was a great help to start the conversation and talk about interpersonal skills you need and relationship skills that you need prior to intimacy.
Yeah, great resources. So, when having the sex talk, what would you recommend parents say?
Well, I would say a good rule of thumb is to say less and listen more. Ask your kids some open-ended questions, some follow-up questions, and that will be your guide to how much information your kiddo needs and how much they already know and what information they know is incorrect. But having more than one conversation, everybody talks about the sex talk, or it isn't one time.
Yeah.
You should be having this ongoing conversation talking about self-care. Number one, if you're going to start talking about sex, talk about self-care, talk about relationships, talk about intimacy with other people before you actually talk about just the physicality of intimacy. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned not having the sex talk just once. So what if parents have had that initial conversation with their child, maybe around age 11, like you suggested, but let's say it's a few years later and parents suspect that their child is becoming sexually active? How can parents handle this situation if they're, not very happy about it?
So are you asking, if the child is already sexually active, how can parents handle that situation? Is
Yeah.
that what we're thinking here? Okay. So, number one, stay calm, parents. you know, uh, Try to keep the line of communication, open with your kids and child centered, not about how you feel, but how the child is feeling. All right. So stay calm, keep that communication open, make sure it is child centered. And just because your child is already maybe involved in sex, it's never too late to talk about it, because maybe their understanding is skewed, like, oh, I can do this and I won't have sex, I'll stand on my head, they'll come up with some crazy things, and you're like, okay, well, let's really talk about, what, causes this, or what happens here, and your responsibility in it. You want to keep in mind, if a child is already sexually active, you can't turn back the clock.
Yeah.
you know you want to make sure that you give them the responsibility of that decision. There's some responsibility that comes with making that decision, and discuss that with your child. So, I had my son crunch the numbers in regards to what it takes to be in the adult world, to be sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
What does it cost you? Not only, money wise, but time wise and your future wise. And getting kids to talk to other kids, I think it's good. And we have a really great resource called Boys Town's Hotline has Your Life, Your Voice site, where kids can talk to other kids. They don't have to listen to me, listen to other kids,
Right.
and also get some expert advice. Sometimes we can tell them till we're blue in the face.
Mhm.
So maybe getting some help from somewhere else. You don't have to have all the answers, mom and dad, but you do have to have the resources. And Boys Town is a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. They can go on Your Life, Your Voice and search by keywords such as relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, and get a lot of great advice there. So that was a great idea. So the next question is, how do we teach our children about moral development, self-worth, using their conscience, and making good decisions that are best for them and their future?
Well, I guess the best way to teach children about moral decision making that could enhance their self worth is to model those attributes in your own life for your children. Kids are watching what you're doing, not always listening to what you're saying. So if you're living that out, that truth out, then they'll follow suit. I also like to bring up the conversation about moral decisions, and uh, just being more conscious of the world around them by just playing games. There's lots of, trivial games out there. There's lots of games that can help kids make decisions. We even have a downloadable on the Boys Town web site um, on integrity, making decisions. Great way to start there. And of course, if they go to any of our classes, they can learn about that. But that might just be the way to introduce it in a fun way, where you have to make a decision about who you're going to put out of the little dinghy. Or any other decision, about firing someone. So there's a lot of games out there that parents could download that would be really great for that particular thing. But definitely just live that truth, and I think kids will learn from your behavior.
Mhm. Definitely. So, what qualities should parents encourage their children to look for when it comes to building healthy and safe relationships?
Good question. Well, I would say that the key thing for a healthy relationship are really three things: time, trust, and respect. So parents should encourage their children to work on developing these key characteristics in their relationships. Let me give you an example. I told my son that he had to have 300 hours of FaceTime with a young lady that he wanted to have a relationship with. And that's not FaceTime with the internet or texting or whatever. That's face to face.
Okay.
Because you're going to be able to tell what the person is really saying, and, what they really mean by, their body language. And then that time together builds up the trust factor. That's that second thing. And you want to trust someone long before you get intimate with them. And respect is also shown as that person putting you down every time you see them, or grabbing you in a certain way, or doing certain things that make you feel less than. So, really having kids focus on those things in order to have healthy relationships: time, trust, and respect.
Hmm. Yeah, those are definitely the magic three to remember. And February is actually Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So we've already shared quite a few resources on it on our Facebook page, but I encourage you to head to boystownparenting.org to find even more. We do have a full guide on building healthy relationships that you definitely want to check out. So thanks for mentioning that. Okay, so oftentimes when our kids fall into relationships and friendships with those who don't always have their best interests in mind, they will get pulled into substance abuse and alcohol abuse, which is tied in with today's topic. So, what advice, Bridget, do you have for parents looking to prevent their kids from drinking, using drugs, all of the above?
Hmm. Well, here's the thing: children will choose their friends, uh, and some of those friends are going to be good friends, and some not so good. But what you can equip your children with is the skill and to make good choices for themselves, regardless of who their friends are, so they can avoid harmful behavior. So, skills like advocating for oneself or displaying appropriate control or managing your stress, self-care. When kids are taking care of themselves and exercising, they're less likely to put stuff in their bodies that are bad for them.
Yeah.
And when they can advocate for themselves and say, hey, I'm not down with that. That's not me. You do you and I'll do me. Give kids those skills to combat those negative influences versus trying to hide them away from this bad kid or that bad kid. I hear a lot of parents say, well, my kid is good, but he has some really bad friends. Well, you might have a good kid, but apparently he doesn't have good skills to deal with bad friends. There's always going to be someone around that's not so good.
Right.
It's giving your child the skill so they can be able to avoid harmful negative behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love what you said of, I feel like a great tie-in with this and something that can motivate kids is, especially when thinking about their future, like whether it's baseball season coming up or, soccer, volleyball. If I always felt like that was a motivator for me. Like, oh, well, if I, do this, then I could get kicked off my team. Or if I do this, then I'm not going to perform at my best. So, kind of talking with, those positive and negative consequences that we often talk about and how they relate into decision making is also something parents could do.
Most definitely. And studies do show that kids who are involved in sports and take their self care as an important part of who they are less likely to do those behaviors. So, definitely encouraging them to do that. But also, again, having those layered conversations, not just having the one talk where you told them and expect that would be enough. And just being mindful of being in tune with kids, what's going on, and noticing the small things that could give away something is different here. Their grades are slipping, or they're staying out and not reporting, or you don't know who this friend is that they have all of a sudden. Those kind of little red flags are what parents should be looking for and attending to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, just a reminder for those of you watching live, if you have questions related to talking to your teen about sex, drinking, and making good choices, feel free to comment them right now, and then we'll make sure to get them answered before the live concludes. Okay, so next question is, if teens have already drank alcohol before or have used other substances, what can parents do to stop it in its tracks?
Well, I would say that one thing to think about is not overreacting, is just try to stay calm and try to get enough information so you can make an informed decision, to help your kid to make an informed decision if they are abusing or using substances. So first, get enough information, stay calm so your child will want to give you that information. It's always great to be proactive than reactive when it comes to dangerous behaviors. And like I said earlier, starting early, as young as 11 or younger, talking to kids about um, drugs or sex is always a good thing. If your child's already doing that, some things that I really strongly suggest is, if you're giving allowance, takeaway allowance, because if they have money to buy drugs or to get to drugs or exchange drugs, you want to do that. If you are having prescriptions out and about, let's say they're abusing that, you want to keep that locked up in a locked box, not just put it up in your medicine cabinet. And then again, you want to get help from an expert if your child is abusing, because we don't have all the answers. And if my kid had a little cut on his finger, I'd put a band-aid on it. But if he was bleeding in front of me, I'm calling an ambulance. And so if my child is abusing drugs, I am going to get him or her the proper support. And that might not always be me.
Yeah.
So definitely just stay calm, get enough information so you can be able to make those kind of decisions about who to get help from, when to get that help, how to do it so that your child is open to it.
Hmm. So when it comes to getting that help, whether it's drug use or alcohol abuse, if they're actively participating in, sexual activities, their grades are slipping as a result because of this. What resources does Boys Town and Boys Town Parenting offer to help families who are in this situation?
Well, of course, I've mentioned quite a few of them already, whether it's the Your Life, Your Voice for kids to be able to download that information and talk to other kids. They have texting, they have an app that assesses how kids are feeling. And if they begin to have a sad face day after day, then the little app will say, "Hey, are you feeling upset? Would you like to talk to someone?" So, there's that directly for kids. There's all these downloadables on our website that parents can download or ask an expert. There's actually a little tab up there. You push that, you'll see all these experts that you can ask a question, send them an email, and they'll send you back the answers. Um, Definitely going to our classes will help you know that you're not alone. There are other parents going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times parents can give other parents great information. And now that Common Sense Parenting is online, at those live classes, wherever you are, you can sign up for a course. So I would definitely say there is some power in numbers of being with other people and that information that you can get by being connected. So create that connectivity for your kids and for yourself.
Hmm. Definitely. So, for parents with kids who are headed off to college in the next year or two, we know that exposure and allure to drinking and participating in sexual activity is a lot higher with that newfound college freedom. How can we help our kids prepare and be safe for these encounters?
Again, that layered conversation. Now we're layering on the next part, which is now you're going to go off to college. My parents talked to me about a lot of things, and guess what? They did not talk to me about. Okay, they were avoiding that conversation. So we're willing to have that conversation about everything else, money and your grades and this and that.
Yeah.
But go ahead and talk about drugs and what they're going to be faced with, and talk about sex and what they're going to be faced with, and not just talk about it, but problem solve and plan for those situations to come up to your child and how they're going to handle that. So again, I would definitely say make sure you have your child's appropriate health care in place, insurances, prescriptions, all those kind of things, because when they go off to college, some of the rights that you once had when they lived in your household are not now null and void. So make sure you have the proper things in place so that you can maybe even get information so that you can see that, hey, my kid is having this kind of a problem, on and on and on, and be able to talk about it. And then keeping those lines of communication open. Just because they go off to college doesn't mean you don't get to talk to them. So, try to stay in contact, not overload or be there every second of the day, but that you all have ongoing scheduled, conversations, and you'll be able to kind of hear in their voices. I can remember my mom and dad hearing in my voice when I was off to college that I was having a difficult time. And I remember my dad just showing up one day and he took me and my girlfriends all out to dinner, and we had a great time. And it just meant the world to me. And so that kind of communication really helps kids get through some difficult times, and helps that they'll go to you when they really need to talk to you about things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Just being there for them. That's in its simplicity. We can talk through all these different methods and, all these articles and ways to do it, but definitely just being there for them and being an open resource for your kid to ask questions and not feel nervous to do so, especially with these
Yeah.
hard hitting topics.
Yeah, and if they have some groups down there, sometimes they won't talk to you.
Yeah.
You could be there all you want, and they won't talk to you. And so we found, a Christian group that I could talk to while I was away at college, and it was really helpful to have them nearby and to talk about my feelings and what was going on, or my boyfriend, or what was going on. So, making sure your kid has some, is plugged into those kind of supports as well.
Yes. Okay, so we just have one more question, and then we do have a question here in the comments. So we'll get to those here. So, what other advice, if any, Bridget, do you have for helping parents understand their risk taking teen? It's such a hard time to be a parent with all of these situations we've discussed today, and we know you have a lot of expertise. So, thought I'd throw that in.
Well, understand that this is the time the kids will take a risk, positive and negative. Some of their risk taking is just really so normal and so needed. They're going to go out into the world now. They have to take that risk. Okay. And give them the skills so they don't take too many, wrong turns in their life. And if they do decide to do that, you gave them the skills. You kept those lines of communication open. You put those supports in there for them to use. And so if they decide, I'm not going to use it, I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to use the skills that I have, I'm not going to, use the support that's there for me, those are decisions they're making. But I have just a quote I keep in mind, in my own mind, when it comes to my kids. And it's like this: in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gentle you lived, and how graceful you let go of the things not meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be times in your life that, as a parent, it's the hardest thing you ever do, is that there's decisions your kids are going to make that you wouldn't have made. You were like,
Right.
oh, that's not good. And that you have to let them take responsibility for. My son said, okay, I'm going to have sex. And I was like, this is not a good thing. But I told him, okay, you're not getting any more allowance. We're going to take part of your paycheck and it's going to go into the savings account over here for this decision you're making in your life,
Yeah.
because you have to pay for this. And, and he was like, wow, this is a much. And I said, yeah, it is much, but this is what you're signing on to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he had $3,000 when he left my house. So good for him.
Yeah, I guess that helps.
And no children. So that all worked.
I would say that did. Yeah, that is great. Okay, so this question in the comment section says, my son calls me old school if I talk to him about not using drugs. He says everyone else does it. What should I tell him? Good question.
Yeah. Yeah, every kid, I think I've gotten this question from a lot of parents, everybody else does it, you're not cool and that kind of thing. And I tell kids, well, two things. One is, you're not everybody else. You're my kid. So I really can't do anything about everybody else. And you're probably right about me. I probably am not cool. That's why I'm a parent. My job is to give you safe passage to your adult life. So that's not always cool, man. That's what I signed up for, to be the uncool person in your life and give you safe passage to your adulthood. So yeah, you're probably right about both of those things, brother.
Right. Just got to own it. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so lastly then, Bridget, can you talk about what upcoming Common Sense parenting classes Boys Town is offering and how they can help build on what we discussed today?
Sure. Okay. Common sense parenting, my favorite topic. Yes. So you can go onto our webpage and you would just put in your zip code, and then it's going to download what classes are available in your area. So we have different sites all over the country where there's actual physical common sense parenting programs being operated. And then we have the national program. They offer classes all over the country as well. Right here in my area, there's going to be 2 new classes starting in March, on March the 1st, and then again on March the 10th. So you just have to go to our webpage, and I'm sure you guys will link them up with that. And then you put your zip code in, and then all the little classes will drop down there for you to choose from, whether it's Common Sense Parenting for toddlers and preschoolers or Common Sense Parenting for school-age children. And depending on the site you choose, there'll be other types of services available, okay?
Awesome. Yep, and we have that linked right above this video or below it if you're watching on YouTube or another platform. So that's great. Well, we hope you will join us next month for our next Common Sense Parenting Facebook chat. And Bridget, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, and I'll see you next time, Gabby.
Yes, sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Bye.